now. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this lecture. I'm very excited to be talking about language because language, and especially language in marketing, is my passion. And I'm always happy to talk about that. I will be describing a little bit about linguistics to, I guess, introduce people who are not aware or not really knowledgeable about linguistics to this fascinating field of research, but also as a sort of a preface because it's very useful to describe how language research happens in marketing by going through linguistics in this way. So I'm going to start right away. I do not see, and I will not see your comments, so feel free to post the comments, but I think we will curate them and I will answer everything at the end, unless I get a voice notification from someone to stop talking and listen, and then I will stop talking. Other than that, I will just keep talking. So, all right. When we think about linguistics, there is something interesting that I discovered that if we think about linguistic research, it is descriptive by nature. So we describe how people talk and how people perceive and how people learn language and acquire language. It's descriptive. What happens in marketing research, often it is predictive. We're doing market research in order to predict what would happen if we did this or that. And there's an opportunity here to use linguistic research in marketing in order to provide predictions about behavior, which I hope to show you how we do it. I'm going to talk with you about language and linguistics today, and also describe lots of examples, not only of my research, but other research as well, that shows how language impacts people and also how it reflects what people think or do in the marketing world. So what are the main domains in linguistic inquiry? Phonetics, that would be the research of sounds in language, not just any sound, but sounds in language, such as d or v, right? And how these sounds represent meaning. And you will see that some research that shows that the sounds themselves can convey meaning. Then, if we wanted to combine these sounds into words, there is research of morphology. That's how we combine sounds into words. And semantics, which is how do we assign meaning, meaning the dictionary meaning, to different words. Syntax and grammar is when we take those words and then we want to combine them into sentences. So that would be different rules for how you combine words into sentences, and different languages, as you probably know, have different rules on how you put words into different orders, and how you can combine them into sentences that have a meaning. Pragmatics is the research of when you have a text, and it could be of any length, how do you use it in order to achieve your goals? That's basically my expertise in linguistics. It's beyond just combining words or combining sentences. It is how people go beyond what is actually said, what is the intended meaning behind it, and how is it conveyed through language in order to achieve certain goals. So that would be pragmatics. Yeah, and if you look at everything, the whole linguistics field, you can see that there is what is called a form, how you create different words, how you create forms of sentences, but then it can convey content, it can convey meaning for a certain reason, for a certain use. And that's how language works, the whole system. There are additional domains of interest that we are very much interested in researching. One is called social linguistics. That's how language is used or changes depending on social context. And this could be, social context could be anything such as different situations, social situations, or political situations as well, how they influence our language. And it's not just like which words we will be using, but it's everything about how we use language. Paralanguage would be everything that is beyond language, but it appears together with the language. So it could be nonverbal behavior as well. In text, it would be things like emoticons and things that reflect something beyond what is being said, such as the voice, the tone that you are trying to convey. And I guess the last would be cross-cultural linguistics, and that's how our culture affects the way we speak or the way we understand language. And when I say culture, it could be actual culture like we would understand, but it also could be literally things that define our subcultures, such as age. So there's a different culture for teenagers, right, as opposed to adults, things like that. Within the cross-cultural linguistics, I'll just dive into it real quick, because this is with the globalization processes that are happening today, this would be something that we would definitely want to look at, especially if we go internationally with our business. There's such a thing that is called code switching. That means when within the communication, for example, this ad, within the communication, you switch from one language to another. So you can see that there is different languages within one ad. And what does it do to the receiver, and why? What does it convey? What does it say about the company, the advertiser, and about the relationships between the consumer in this case and the advertiser? There is research, very interesting research, I think, which shows that language in our first language, emotion in our first language seems stronger. So if we said something in our first language and it would be like emotional talk, it would sound more emotional than if we did it in a second language, a language that is less native to us. So that's one of the reasons, for example, that people often curse and swear in second language. They don't use their first language to swear because it's too strong. It sounds too strong. To that effect, I have to make a confession to everyone here. I've never said I love you to my parents or to my children, and some people might feel the same sentiment and say, yeah, me too, actually. And but others might say, what's wrong with you? The thing is that this is not something that is part of our culture, me and some other people. And in fact, my children have been growing in the US, where it is very much a thing to say, I love you to your parents, right? Or to your children or to your friends. And my children say, I love you all the time. They say that instead of thank you, instead of goodbye, they say that all the time. At the end of a phone call, I love you. And then they stare at me and they say, Mom, say back. And I feel really uncomfortable. And I'm like, you know, like it's very uncomfortable for someone who doesn't have it in the culture. And it's not like I don't like my children or I don't love my parents. It's just how we express this emotion. So in an article that we published some time ago, we focused on this specific phrase, I love you, which is a token, right? It's a token phrase in the language that expresses love and something beyond. And we asked participants who were of American, like native to the United States, who were born here, and people who were born in China. And we asked, do you say I love you to your parents, to your grandparents, to your children? And as we would expect, the Americans said, yeah, sure, all the time. But the Chinese respondent said, actually, no. And we asked why. And they said, well, this is not part of our culture, and it would sound so weird if we did. And we asked, well, okay, so how else do you express your love? And they said, well, we do things. We don't say it, but we do things instead. So like gift giving is very accepted, but then saying is less. So this is all to the question of cross-cultural linguistics and how language can reflect in different things. So kind of if you can imagine an ad that goes internationally, and in the US, there's, I don't know, like a mother and the daughter are speaking to each other, and then at the end, yeah, I love you, and bye-bye, right? It will never happen in China, right? Or in other cultures that don't have this difference. So that's the cross-cultural linguistics. Now let's go back to phonetics, the first one, right? The first area of language. And we think about phonetics as sounds, and you might ask, how can sounds convey meaning? It's not even words yet. So let me show you. For example, it has been shown before that, and it's called phonetic symbolism, that the place where the sound is articulated in the mouth, in the oral cavity, might influence the way things work. So let's look at, for example, at these two objects. So we have a knife and we have a hammer, and we actually have a poll for you guys, that you might want to work with. How are we with the poll?
Good, I'll go ahead and launch it.
Okay. I have a question about this poll. So which of the following brand names is more suitable for a knife, and which one is more suitable for a hammer, right? So if you could just put your votes in for the brand name that you feel is more suitable for the knife.
Okay.
We'll just wait a little bit longer to let everyone respond. Quick question, does everybody see the result or only I do?
Let's see. I think once I end the poll, it'll show the results.
All right, okay. I will then not try to control it, right?
Yeah, no, I just let me know when you would like me to end it.
I think we're good where we haven't been seen any additions so far.
Okay.
Just a few more people, but
okay,
so,
and I can share results. All right, there we go.
Yeah, so now everybody can see it, right?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone can see a smashing win for the TDIP, right? And now the question is, of course, why, right? How so? Why did we have such a big yes for TDIP and not for TODIP, right? Can we now remove this result?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't.
Yes, could we remove the results? Because I mean, I see them on the screen. I just wanted.
Okay, I did remove them. I don't know if you can still see, but.
Okay, then I removed it myself too. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
All right, great. If it doesn't appear to anybody else, that's great. So, and you can also see, you can see now that the vast majority of people, and this is you're in a good company. The vast majority of people says that, well, a knife should be a TDIP and a hammer should be a TODIP, and the reason is mainly because the E, the sound E, sounds smaller, sharper, right? And awe, right? The cavity creates this more wholesome sound, and it influences what people make in terms of meaning, what meaning people make of sounds. Let me show you another example. So if you think about the direction of articulation, so I will skip this, forgive me. I will go to the articulation direction effect, or it's also called in-out effect, and also embodied phonetics. The idea behind it is that if you had to call a brand name or this ice cream thing, if you had to call it BW or UW, and if you, without even opening your mouth or making a sound, just in your mind or in your oral cavity, say E, U, E, U, E, U, you will feel how your tongue moves back and forth, right? E, U, back and forth. And when you say E, it is in the front. When you say U, it goes back. So if we have a similar poll, if we did, we will not, but if we did a similar poll, and in our experiments, that's what happens consistently, we get the consistent preference for a BW over a UW. And the question is why? So if you, when you moved your tongue back and forth saying EU, something that happens when you say first the E, the one that at the front, and then the U, the one that is at the back, the vowel that is at the back, it resembles and embodies, it mimics acceptance. It mimics intake. And this influences the way people perceive products. So they have a positive perception of products, not even necessarily edible products. So this is an example of an edible product, but not even, so it's transferred to all sorts of products. It's basically transferred to positive attitudes. So you would want maybe even to give your children names that have first a front vowel and then a back one. And this doesn't happen in reality all the time. So it's not like that's someone whose name ends with a front vowel like E is immediately not going to be as liked as someone else. But this is an effect that we find in marketing, in our experiments. And it is explained by the way our body helps us understand the world is through embodiment, and embodiment of sounds, for example, is one of those ways in how our body helps us understand and make sense of the world. And this is about phonetics. I'm going to switch now and jump from phonetics to the next area in linguistics, which is morphology and semantics. But just before that, I wanted to mention a few things that actually tell us that this order of first E and then U is universal. So this is called tic-tac-toe, E, O, right? E first and then O. The, what's her name? In Cinderella, right? The fairy, she says bibbidi babbidi boo, right? E and then U, etc. Right? The E, U is a universal thing that helps us understand the world and helps us perceive the world and tell ourselves pretty fast in our mind, is this good or bad? Do I want it or not? Is this danger or not? Jumping to morphology and semantics. And again, morphology is how we construct words from those sounds, from phonemes. And semantics is how do we assign dictionary meaning to those words. This research takes into account different things. For example, some words have the same form, but different meanings. So, for example, companies use the fact that some words can be written in different ways, but they sound exactly the same. So, for example, "We will die for you," which is a company that sells dye. "Don't leave without a goodbye." That's a sign in an airport that a company put, playing on the sound with "Don't leave without a goodbye," right? Sometimes words actually have the same meaning, but different forms, synonyms, right? So if you say, "This restaurant is amazing," our research shows that if you use, instead of the word restaurant, a more precise word, a synonym that is more precise, "This steakhouse is amazing." What happens, people think about this steakhouse. If you called it a restaurant, people would think that is less unique. But if you say it is a steakhouse, a more precise word, people would think that it is more unique. And the connection between language precision and how we perceive products is very important, because the choice of language is always yours. You can choose any language you want, any words that you want, any synonyms. But being aware of the outcomes of this choice is super important for communication. Other research, and this is not mine, other research shows that if you say, "I don't eat breakfast," at a bed and breakfast, they will leave you alone. But if you choose to express your refusal with a word, "I can't eat breakfast," and people do that naively, they just try to be nice, but then somehow it makes other people feel that, well, "I can't" doesn't sound so definite as "I don't." So they start, "Well, maybe you can today, maybe if you started early, maybe you later in the day, maybe take a sandwich with you." Instead of all of this, you just say, "I don't." So that's some piece of advice that my colleagues suggested a while ago. And sometimes in service, when you think about, and all we're talking about here is word choice. When you think which pronouns to use. So think about the pronoun "we." You know, because you know the word "we," that it includes me and you. When I say "we" and I'm talking with you, and I say "we," I mean me and you, we're included, and there is a whole group that is included. "We" is not just one person. So you can see in this ad that the "we" is included in the me is included in the "we." So this is about how you choose pronouns. And if you remember, during COVID, there was this phrase that was actually very successful. "We are all in this together," right? "We." So it puts you also in the same bucket together with everybody else, in the same boat. And there's this understanding that, yeah, you're also part of that. So you better do it, right? One more thing, maybe more about brand names and brands. So the, Apple, for example, chose to use the word "I," that has to do with the pronouns, of course, with all its products. So "I" has this strong effect here. This is a very, the iPhones, they became a very personal product that it has to do with, this is only mine, not anybody else's, and I'm very much connected to that iPhone. So now we want to put the words into sentences, and we have certain rules how to do that. So we have, and they're called syntax. So syntax is how you construct sentences or clauses or phrases out of separate words. What's beautiful about language, and this is the time to say that, is that there is a limited set of words. Yeah, there are like tens of thousands of words, but that's it. That there's no like indefinite number of words. There's a limited set of words and the limited set of rules. You have grammar books that they contain all the rules, and that's it. Just one book of rules, one dictionary of words. And with those together, you can actually create an indefinite number of sentences. And we do that all the time. So this is beautiful about language, that we can, with a set and a limited number of words and a limited number of rules, we can create an indefinite number of sentences or linguistic expressions. So with syntax and grammar, we're thinking how grammatical rules can create meaning. So for example, if we think about punctuation, right? It really matters. This small comma that you have here really matters, right? So if you say, let's eat grandma, or let's eat grandma. And another example, a woman without her man is nothing. Or if you use just a little bit of a different punctuation, a woman without her man is nothing, right? So it's such small things, but they change the whole meaning. And that's just an example of the beauty in language. So what research shows us? For example, research shows that if you choose a connecting word and versus with, and it sounds kind of, that's the same thing. Well, it looks like it's not. If you choose and, peanut butter and jelly, right? Versus strawberry with whipped cream, right? So with sounds to people as this is by definition together, coming together. If you put and, it sounds like a nice to have, but not necessary. So if you're thinking about bundles and products and or maybe events, and you're trying to convey the point that this is a must-have. This is something that will always come together. You will be using with. But if you're trying to actually convey that this is not something which is part of the bundle or part of the product or part of the offer or part of the event that you're planning, you will be using and. So it matters what to use. All right, let me switch to the next field. It is pragmatics is about using language. So it's not about structuring, it's not about the form anymore, it's about the use. How you use language in order to convey certain meaning. How do you sometimes exploit language in order to achieve your goals. And let me show you what I mean. I will be talking a lot about things that are happening beyond the said words. What's beyond that? So, for example, if we want to achieve goals with language, we can use figurative language. So, for example, there's it's a product review that has had this title. I read the product review, and the product review said, "We will rock you," right? So it used a paraphrase on a famous song by the Queen, but it also used the name of the product itself. And this way, in a figurative way, which is figurative language is an indirect way of conveying things, it conveyed the point that it was a review for the console Wii, for the game console, and what it meant is that it's good, right? What we find is that using figurative language is great, but only for hedonic products that are purchased for fun, for enjoyment. Utilitarian products, those that are purchased for function, to use, they don't really enjoy or benefit from using figurative language. And the reason is because figurative language is associated with emotional and emotionality and emotional talk. So if you use figurative language in relation to products that are not emotional, and hedonic consumption, like it's fun and it's enjoyable, it's more connected to emotion. But utilitarian products, you have to use them, so because you have to use them. So they are not really evoking emotion. And therefore the language also, like the figurative language also fits better with emotional consumption with hedonic products than with literal ones, with the utilitarian ones. In another research, we investigated what happens when people use what is called consensus language. Consensus language is what we term as consensus language is when you say, oh, everybody has already seen this movie, or when you say, everyone is going to this party you want to go to. So when you say everyone, what do you actually mean, right? And we're saying an interesting thing is happening here. Usually when we listen to word of mouth about products, we're more convinced by word of mouth that comes from strong ties, from our friends, from people we can trust, right? From family members. But specifically in the case that they use consensus language, such as everybody, something else is happening and it interferes with this initial inclination. And it seems to be working better or more convincingly when someone who is not such a strong tie, someone who is like an acquaintance or maybe someone at work says this, everybody. And the reason is because when someone says everybody, they mean that there is a certain consensus. That's why we call it consensus language. There's a certain consensus among a certain group of people. But how big is this group of people that have a consensus and everybody thinks that this is good? This size of the group is referenced by the word everybody. If it's referenced by someone who is close to me, the distance, the social distance between me and this person is pretty small, right? It's a strong tie. It's a small and tight group. So everybody is the consensus, includes not so many people, actually. But then when it's someone who is far away, the distance between me and this person is so large, the group that they entail when they say everybody, they actually mean everybody around us. So this consensus language is actually more useful in the use of weak ties, of people far away from me than people who are close to me. So if you're close to somebody and you want to convince them to do something, don't use everybody. Instead, you can use maybe I, or maybe you and I, we. That's also an idea. So that's another research on this, how people use language in order to convey meaning and to achieve goals. And I want to tell you about one more research in that domain of research. A very interesting thing that we find, and it's very simple, but at the same time, it's a little bit puzzling. So when you think about product reviews, you guys all, I suppose, read product reviews, and you read what, like 4 or 5 reviews, depending on the product, and then you make up your mind. And research shows, not mine, research shows that when people are more certain, you would imagine they are more willing and more easily making up their minds. So you want consumers to be certain, to be confident. And this means that you would want to solicit reviews also from confident consumers, right? Because they will probably be more persuasive and they will make readers also more confident. So guess what? Interestingly enough, if I'm a consumer and I'm absolutely confident about this product and my attitudes about the product, and I'm coming to write a review, I will be less likely to write a review after I kind of read and kind of look at other reviews. What did they write before I start typing in mine? I'll just type in because I'm confident. I know what I'm going to say. So my review will turn out to be less similar to other reviews, right? Because I wrote it without looking at them. So my review is less similar to other reviews. But then when readers come and read my review among other reviews, and they read those other reviews, if I came to read reviews of, as a consumer, reviews of people who are confident, those who companies usually solicit to write reviews, they will not be very similar to each other. And I will be like, okay, I don't know what to do because I'm getting less confident. I do not want to have to make these decisions. So what do we get? It looks like more confident, more certain writers of reviews actually create less certain readers of reviews because their reviews are not so similar to each other. But then the other way around, the opposite also happens. In the sense that if I'm not certain, I will start looking what other people wrote, and then I'll write my review, and it will be more similar to what other people wrote. So those more similar reviews were written by people who are less certain about the product, right? But then if readers read those repeating reviews and they seem so similar to each other and they kind of repeat the same idea, the readers become more certain. So it looks like less certain people create more certain people, but then more certain people create less certain people. And it's not like we have a lot of ideas how to solve this thing besides just letting people know that, and it's called market education, some of you might know, when you just tell people, you tell them that actually you might want to search for reviews that are not similar to each other because this would mean that you are reading different reviews and they express more certain opinions. I know that in advertising, there's a lot of assertiveness. We're being told what to do all the time. Do this, do that, you must buy that. And together with my colleagues, we found that while in many cases it doesn't really work so well because it elicits reactance, like don't tell me what to do, I'm a consumer and I want to decide what to do. In some cases it does. And for example, in green consumption, in pro-environmental advertising, we find that more more assertive language is more useful and more influential when the topic is important to people. So, like some environmental issues are important for people. So, for example, in some countries where the drought is significant, water conservation is an important issue. Or for some segments, some topics are more important. Or sometimes there's temporary importance of, during COVID, it was hygiene. Sometimes it is air pollution. So we found that throughout all of these distinctions, when we use more assertive language, we find that people they prefer more assertive language than non-assertive because it kind of acknowledges the urgency of the matter and the importance of the matter. How much time do I have?
You're good for the next 5 to 10 minutes as far as presentation.
Perfect. Exactly. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yes, another topic that I wanted to describe would be how can we encourage retirement savings? So everybody knows that retirement savings are important, yet finding people who actually start retirement savings early enough and have enough money in their retirement savings when they are about to retire is pretty rare. And we started thinking, how can we convince people to start investing in their retirement early enough? What can we do? There are lots of programs and attempts. Many of them are very expensive, so that's not very sustainable. And other attempts, they have these programs, and and as long as you participate in this program, everything goes well. But the moment the program stops, you also stop. And so again, it's very time and effort consuming. And we were thinking of simpler ways to do that, to encourage people to invest in their retirement. And we thought of language, of linguistics. And we thought of how do usually retirement plans advertised? Usually it is something like this. You get this picture of a good life, but then the wording of the advertisements is smashingly predominantly statements. They're just saying things. And there's something important to know about statements versus questions, and that's going to be the point. If I told you something, for example, it will rain tomorrow, it will, come into one ear and get out of the other. It will not be remain in your brain as a topic for discussion. But then, if I asked you, do you think it will rain tomorrow? At this point, the brain starts processing the question much more deeply. And the reason is because for the brain, for the mind, a question is unfinished business. It is something is not finished, something is not complete, there's something I don't know. And until I find the answer for this question within myself or outside anywhere, I will continue looking for it. So a question makes you think differently. It activates the brain and makes it think differently and more concretely. And this more concrete thinking actually brings about everything that is somewhere in the future, brings it closer in time. And if it's closer, then I'm going to have to do something about it. So it activates. And we use phrases, for example, like it's always a good time to invest in retirement, as opposed to a question asking the same thing. When is a good time to invest in retirement? And we use these questions and questions of that sort in various experiments, such as sending bank notifications to participants. So they, for example, they receive this bank notification versus this bank notification, and we measured which ones, which of the groups, the two groups, is going to be more likely to click this or to swipe this notification and to start thinking about retirement. We measured with different activities as responses to these statements versus questions to try and find the responses. All right. All of these examples were in order to show you how people use and how we can use language in order to investigate how people use language in order to achieve their goals and how they do that. We can make conclusions about people's goals by investigating their language, so we can know what people want. And it helps sometimes in situations where people are not really willing to tell you about their goals and about their motivations. That's very useful in that sense. We also use linguistic research in investigation of health behavior, how people behave and how people talk when they want to achieve certain health goals. So here you can say, you can see an example of two different ads that we posted on Facebook for CrossFit. One was train with friends, and the other was commit to be fit or start smart, stay strong. So all of these are more figurative expressions than just train with friends. And we found that figurative language is more useful because it is perceived as fun. So people feel that these health goals that often are perceived as, oh, I have to do that again. So they are perceived as more fun. We did another experiment in a university cafeteria in the student hall. We found that if we, instead of calling a lettuce wrap, calling it green submarine, they were more likely to take something that is made of vegetables. So we have all of these research directions, and they all connect figurative language to fun, to enjoyment with health activities, and they are helping enhance health, and they also show that people they enjoy health activities more, and when they do, they also use more figurative language. This is just an example of yet another project and activity that we're doing. We developed an app that sends notifications, which could be saying time for your sleep self-report in the morning, or time to go to bed in the evening, or it says slept like a rock, log it, or time to hit the sack. So figurative language, using figurative language to encourage people to behave, develop healthier habits. Am I done? I think I am.
Yeah. You can, if you were in the middle of a thought, you can absolutely finish it, but also we can open it up for questions from the audience. If you have anything that you would like to ask Anne, definitely share it in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll relay that to her.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, if you're in the middle of a thought, I do want you to totally finish it if you'd like.
Thank you. I have endless research, so I think I will stop here. This is a research about ways to detect fake reviews by the language that they use, but it's a whole new story. So I think I'll stop here, and maybe I can get out of the of the sharing just so I can see the questions. Is that good?
Sure.
Okay.
Sweet.
Is it okay if I stop sharing? Share it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally.
All right. Yeah.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions or would like Anne to go into a little bit more detail about anything? Here's a question.
Sure. There are lots of questions. Do you want me to go through them or do you want to curate them? How would you like to go?
I can help curate them. Here's one. So for things like encouraging responsible investment, do you have findings that show what would work best?
Okay. I could, yes. So if we're thinking about responsible investment, we would always want to start from definition, but let's say that responsible investment, meaning when you think about the outcomes, when you plan the investment, let's put it this way, just for the sake of, so you would probably want, and it has been shown before, okay, two things. One would be, I think I would relate this to the questions research. If you went with a set of questions and asked yourself questions all the time, one after the other, I think it will help you make the plan better. That's one thing. Another thing that is not exactly something that we can change necessarily, but something to be aware of. Research by Keith Chen shows a very interesting thing about the ability for future planning depends on what language you speak. So some languages, like English, for example, have a form to express the future in the present tense. So for example, I am going to a restaurant tomorrow, right? But this I am going is in the, right? It's in the present. Not all languages have this form, and what they show is that those languages that don't have this form, that have the future only in the future tense, they don't have it like in the present, they are not as good in planning for the future, especially financial planning. So it might be bad news for people who speak those languages, but it might be good news just to say, well, let's express all of these investment planning. Let's express them in the present, this going to form. So it kind of brings the future closer and you start actually planning and not just like, oh, it's somewhere in the future. That's the idea. Right. Should we go somewhere else?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Rolling in. Do you have any comment about the cross-cultural significance of language styles between Western and Asian cultures, between low context Western and high context Asian styles, and on influence between SVO and SOV languages? With more and more Asian multinationals driving corporate communication, I think it's becoming more important.
Totally agree. Yes. I did mention in the beginning about one specific thing about the phrase "I love you," but we don't obviously need to talk about that again. What we notice is that this is not the only phrase that in high context cultures people believe to be obvious. You don't need to say that. So just for context, in the US, this is called a low context culture, meaning that if you didn't say it, it's not here. So in order to have things actually perceived or thought about, or to make things apparent to people, you need to say it. And that's why they kind of say, I love you, even though it's obvious that you love me, you're my daughter. But then it also, it's expressed in business. We see this, that Americans would say, for example, do you agree? And people would say, yes, I agree, right? Like, and it's kind of, it's very accepted. But then in high context cultures, they don't say anything. It's supposed to be obvious. It's also seen in movies. you can see that high context cultures, they have a lot of silence in the movies, and it's not like awkward silence. It's like when you photograph, like in the screen, you see the eyes and they mean something, and then there's some gaze and it means something. You have much less of this happening in low context cultures such as the Western culture.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question. Not sure. From Stacy, how have you done or seen research on repetition, either same word used multiple times in communication or even repeating a word being useful for memory and recall?
Yeah. Yes. So I can tell about my research about maybe not repetition of the same word. There is research about that as well, about repeating ads. So, they could be crazy annoying, right? When they repeat over and over, the repetition of advertising. But there's an interesting thing that happens. So yes, they are more annoying at the time of repetition, but what it also happens, and you mentioned it, so I'm talking about that, your memory improves. The more repetitions you have, your memory improves. Now, this by itself is not very interesting, but if you think over time, when you advertise, you don't advertise for people to right now get up and go and buy something. You would advertise in order for people later, when time comes and when the product becomes relevant, that they buy your product. And at that time, a very interesting thing happens to annoyance and memory. Over time, annoyance decreases very fast. Memory actually stays pretty high. So over time, it seems like advertising repetition is a good thing. It helps very much for companies, for the advertisers. And the reason is because it's called FAB, the fading affect bias. Fading affect bias, when we tend to fade the negative emotions, they tend to fade much faster than the positive ones. So memory is not an emotion, memory is just a cognitive process, but it remains the same, almost the same level. And we have this in our experiments. We see that memory remains almost the same, but then annoyance just decreases. So after a while, the more heavily repeated advertising actually brings the product back, and people prefer that product over the one that was less annoying at the time, but it was also less remembered.
Okay, wonderful. Would you be open to connecting with some people on LinkedIn if they have questions that they weren't able to ask?
Yes, I always answer pretty fast. Any questions on email or LinkedIn, anything.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. Clearly, with their questions, everyone, found it super valuable and insightful. I think it's always great to have this research to, take into our day to day. So thank you so much. And everyone, this will be online and emailed to you within 48 hours. So yeah, thank you all
Thank
for
you very
coming.
much.
Good one.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.